So now we're going to take a look at movement and positions. So position is just where the object is in the game, represented as an X, Y, Z coordinate. So on the top right here, you can see every single object that's got a transform is going to have an X, a Y, and a Z position. Now I can move these around just in here. So just by changing the numbers, whether I type it in, whether I drag it, or whether I drag it in the scene, you'll see that those numbers change to reflect where the object is. So to access that, you're going to start out by going to the game object layer, and then you have this transform component that's going to be attached to the game object. And then once you've got that, you go into the position property. So it also does have a rotation and a scale, but we're just going to deal with position. And in some cases, you might even want just one of the individual like X, Y, or Z's. But most time you're going to feed it a vector 3. So position is a vector 3, and it's usually going to take a vector 3. But there are some use cases where you just want these individual numbers to be kind of more specific. All right, so let's look at how we can change those numbers in the code. So one of the most standard ways is we're just going to set one position equal to another. So I've taken just a public vector 3 variable here. This is what we're going to write in the inspector and move stuff by. So I've got context menu. We're just going to right click the function. It's going to do the function. So here you can see we're accessing first the game object, then its transform, and then its position. And once you're at this position, now this is a vector 3, so we can give it another vector 3. So we're just saying, hey, this position is equal to this vector 3, and that object is going to go over there. Now this one's a little different, so we're still moving it by that same vector, but what we're doing here is we're actually saying move by this amount. So it's not go here, it's move by this amount. So a different thing. Usually with like character controllers, if you have a certain direction or speed, that's how you're going to do it. So that could be run an update, so it's going to move kind of smoothly, or maybe every time you press a button, it's just going to move by that amount. Now we also have lerping here. Lerping is kind of just one object going to a target smoothly over time. So we've got our target, we've got our speed. We're just going to double check that there is actually a target before we try and move to it. And then we're just going to set the position of this game object equal to kind of an intermediary distance between you and the target. So it takes your position, it takes where you're going, and then the speed that you want to get there. Notice we're doing time delta time just because that is in the update function. So 3 slightly different things. They're all moving by vector 3s. First one, we're just going to set the position, go here. Second one, we're going to translate, so we're going to move by this amount. And third one, we're going to say go towards this target. So if we hit play in the inspector here, let's just start out with the cube. You can see it's already going over to that sphere. So I can actually move that sphere anywhere that I want, and the cube is going to go towards it. So how I did that is I just put the script movement on the cube, and then I just drag and dropped the target sphere. So I could even put the player in here, and now he's going to go over to the player, or I could put the sphere back, and now he's going to go to the sphere. So that's something you could do during your game, right? You can change if the enemy or the target changes, you can have an object switch where it's going. Okay, now let's look at the player and just those other 2 functions. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to move it to a certain position. So rather than typing up here, we're going to go down here, we're going to set our vector. Let's make it maybe 1, 1, -2. And then I'm just going to set it equal to that position. So if you notice right now, the player is at -3.3, -0.53, and -1.84. Now when I set his position, he's going to go to that new one that I set. So now you can see these 2 vector 3s are the same, that 1, 1, -2. So even if I call this again, he's not going to move or go anywhere different because that's where he's supposed to be. So this is very good if you just want to put an object in a certain place. But now let's look at the move function. So that's actually going to move him by that amount. So every time that I call this, he's going to increase by that amount. So he's going to go 1 on the X, 1 on the Y, and down 2 on the Z. So that's kind of the basics of movement, just some ways that you can get an object to go around in the scene.